testing.
Music and all that is too complicated.
No, he's giving away. Yeah. Yeah. Welcome, everybody. Good morning. Great to see everybody here at the Southern African Friends and Family Reunion 2023. This has been a event that's been about 2.5 years in the makings. The pandemic got in the way. But I just want to welcome everybody. My name is Mo Kashavji, and in case people don't know, I am from Calgary, Alberta. And if people are still wondering who the hell I am, I'm Rexy's son, all right? As we are starting our event today, we're going to have lots of time to visit, lots of time to catch up, make new friends. Our theme today is creating connections, and that's what we want you to do. So I'm going to introduce you to your MC for the afternoon, and we'd like to give him a warm welcome. I'd like to introduce you to Ariane Kanji, who is a performing artist and on-air personality here in Toronto, Canada. With over a decade of training in Bollywood, hip-hop, contemporary, and other styles of dance, Ariane has performed on some of the world's biggest stages. His passion for performing also expands to acting, where Ariane has studied theater and performed in numerous plays, one being Into That Heaven of Freedom, a play that he co-wrote as an adaptation of Mamad Kashavji's book with the same title. As a student of RCA Media Production at Toronto Metropolitan University, Ariane continues to explore his passion for performing while studying aspects of technical production and content creation. Please help me and welcome Ariane to this podium.
Ariane Kanji, everyone.
Hi, I'm Ariane Kanji. No, but before I bring up the superstar, I just need to ask everybody. I know this is very exciting. It's exciting for me to see everybody and catch up, and you're going to have lots of time to do that. But for the time, exactly. That perfect. You guys are so amazing. All right. There you go. Didn't have to say anything. That's it.
How are y'all doing today? Woo! First of all, thank you, Mo, for that introduction. I totally didn't tell you what to say. It is an absolute honor to be here today as your MC. And to think that at the last reunion, I wasn't even 10 years old. And now in 2023, I have the honor to be here as your MC. I hope that doesn't make you feel a little extra old today. Yeah? But jokes aside, a lot has changed since our last reunion. And with the pandemic, a lot stood in the way of even making this one happen. But seeing Uncle Murad smile, where is he? Oh yes, seeing his wonderful smile and seeing Nabila and Mo's stress really shows that the day has finally come. I think Mo is most excited to stop sending emails. Where is Mo? How many emails have you sent? Have you? 23, okay, I was expecting like 5,000, but before we get into today's programming, I just want to tell you all a little bit more about myself, but not too much because like many members of our family, I could probably go on for hours. I am the proud grandson of Murad Ali and Neelam Kashavji, who I know would be the first people here excited to reunite with all of you. And like my grandparents, there are so many beautiful souls that are no longer with us since we last met in 2009. We miss their presence and remember them fondly as we connect with each other today. But that being said, we also have so many new faces that represent the next generation of us Southern Africans. And I look forward to meeting all of you throughout the day and getting to know you on a more personal level, which I'm sure you all have noticed has become a lot easier thanks to the name tags you were given when you got in today. So try to make it a goal to read each person's name tag and see what you may have in common with them. We have a very diverse group of people here today. I saw some podcasters, choreographers, doctors, green thumbs, and some people with very controversial hockey opinions. Yes, it's a true battle of the Leafs versus anti-Leafs fans. Let's go Habs. Yeah. Yeah. You'll also notice a QR code on each other's name tags. This is not so you can check each other's vaccination status. Nope. This is actually to get each other's contact information and easily build a stronger connection. So to take advantage of this feature for the non-tech savvy people like maybe my parents, all you have to do is pull out your camera and either take a picture or scan someone else's QR code, and this will prompt a link to add that person into your contacts, so you can digitally keep today's connections. Connections are what we are here for, and it is my hope that you can take advantage of all of today's programming and interact with people of all ages. There will be lots of time to walk around and mingle, as you just did, but I also want to remind everyone that we have a few senior members of the South African community here today as well, who may not be able to walk around as much, so feel free to sit with them and hear the valuable stories that they have to share. And speaking of stories, you'll also notice that there are a few topics at each table to help prompt conversations. Now, I know what you're thinking. The last thing our family needs is help talking to one another, right? And while most of us have the gift of gab, hopefully these can help inspire some meaningful conversations as well. Shout out to everyone who put them together. I want to also draw some attention to the group mural as well at the back. You probably might have missed it or you saw it coming in, which I encourage all of you to sign and leave a short message. We'll be using it as a backdrop for the group photo, which will be taken around 2:45, so please take a moment to sign it, write something short before we take the picture later today. Now, considering how much I'm talking about conversations, I think it's time that we actually break for just that. Let's take a few moments to just introduce ourselves at our tables if we haven't done so already. And to break the ice, you can all discuss your favorite things about today's MC. Or you can use those table topics. Thank you. Awesome. some delicious food. So the lunch is now being served, but can we just please ask that if there are any seniors that they can go first, or you can let them go ahead of you if you're already in line. I think everyone is sort of gathered around that area, so whenever you're ready, feel free to have lunch. Our lunch so far? Good? Yeah. Let's give a round of applause for lunch. Can I just get everyone's attention, even in the far end over there? Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, we've all heard of dinner and a show, but have you heard of lunch and a keynote? Well, I'm excited because our next guest is no stranger to our reunions, and I personally cannot wait to welcome them up here. Ali Velshi is an award-winning journalist, host of Velshi, and chief correspondent for MSNBC, and a weekly economics contributor to NPR's Here and Now. He has covered multiple U.S. presidential elections and significant news stories around the globe, including extensive reporting from Ukraine and across Central and Eastern Europe during the Russian invasion, the Syrian refugee crisis from Turkey and Jordan, the Iran nuclear deal in Tehran, the Greek debt crisis in Athens, and the funeral of Nelson Mandela in South Africa. He previously worked as an anchor and correspondent for Al Jazeera America and CNN. Let's give a warm welcome and round of applause for Ali Velshi.
Thank you, everybody. It's not going to be a keynote because my mom and dad have just left the room, so I need to get this over before they come back. Thank you for that warm introduction. It's not going to be much of a speech. I'm just going to tell you a few little thoughts on my mind. I wasn't 100% sure I was going to be here. I got a lot of emails from my dad, about registering and paying and all that kind of stuff, but I wasn't sure I was going to be here because about 18 hours ago, I landed, and I had come from Ukraine. All week I've been in Ukraine, and I've been deflecting texts from my dad, who was on and on about how this was going to be the last one that he organized, which I've heard before, let me tell you. But last Saturday, I finished my show. It finishes at noon, and I got a call from my boss. She doesn't call me all that much, but she called me, and I knew there was trouble. And she said to pack my bags and head over to Ukraine. The story, as you know, was this possible coup that was going on in Russia. But because of the reporting I do, I'm persona non grata in a lot of countries, and Russia would be included in those. So it wasn't a kind of place I could go to. It's not unsafe physically for me to travel, but it would be the kind of place that I'd face, the fear of arrest or detention. So Kyiv made sense because I'm familiar with it. I've been there a couple of times before since the war began. We've got infrastructure there to do some TV shows, and it's pretty close to Russia, so we can tell the story. But getting to Kyiv itself is a complicated ordeal from New York because there's a team of us who go. So you fly from New York to some place. In my case, it was Amsterdam, and then you connect to Warsaw because you can't fly into Ukraine. And then from Warsaw, you drive 5 or 6 hours to the border, and then Ukraine is under curfew because it's a war, so you can't drive there at night. So you spend your night at a hotel. You get up at the crack of dawn, and you head to the border. You try and get through, and that takes 2 or 3 hours because we carry a lot of gear. And then you get to Ukraine. The hotel you spend the night in on the border, by the way, it's on the Polish side of the border. And for those of you who ever remember my parents' old house at 42 Hoyle Avenue, in the old days before renovation, that's what the basement looked like. It was like wood paneling. It looks like a place right out of the 60s or 70s. A lot of that happens in Eastern Europe. Anyways, Sunday morning we wake up at dawn. We cross the border. You hope, if you don't have too many roadblocks or checks or air raid sirens, you get to Kyiv by it takes about 8 hours to get there from the border. So this week has been unusual for me, but I've been doing things that actually make a lot of sense in preparation for this reunion. Some of us have attended every one of them since they began in Toronto, in Lisbon, and elsewhere in Calgary. But for me, this one's a little bit different, because since the last time we gathered, this has transformed from an event that is simply one in which I am meeting cousins and uncles and aunts into something where I'm meeting and getting to know people who were babies and little children who didn't grow up in a milieu in which they were exposed to their family all the time. So the sense of new connection, it's not just a reunion for some people, it's really new connections. In many cases, there are some people, this little one I'd never met before. But there are young people who I've met before, but now they've blossomed into young people with creativity and ideas about their lives and ambitions and visions. And it's a commemoration, really, of a journey, but in my sense, it's a continuation of a journey that this family has taken starting in the late 1800s in India, which took us then to Africa and to Canada and the United States and Portugal and the United Kingdom in the 1900s, and then to the far corners of the world in the 2000s. In fact, Laurie and I were just in India, in Chotila, what was March? In March. And I'd been there before, but I'd been there on another trip to India in which I was doing other things, and I hadn't really gone there as a pilgrimage. I'd done the sort of 3-hour version of show me all the things I need to see, and now I have to go back and catch a flight. And this time I did it with an eye to our family's history, because I've just finished a book on this, which will get published next year. And it's really the tie between the story of our family's history and emigration and the various fights for liberty and justice, and into this sort of quest for excellence that we're in now. And it's a lot of people have that story, but it to me mirrors the things that are most important in society right now, the challenges that we actually are facing in society right now, particularly those of us who have come here from the United States. A fairly existential challenge for democracy itself, which is, as I look at my uncles and aunts in this room, I think to myself, they struggled for decades to get out of a situation in which there was not liberty, and there was not democracy, and there was not freedom, and there was not equal justice for all, to get to a place where there were all of those things. And now even that in some places looks tenuous. Far less here in Canada than in the United States, but it's tenuous everywhere. This whole concept of democracy, particularly in the US, being tenuous in the place where democracy was essentially brought to the modern world is kind of amazing. And I wondered whether our ancestors in India would have imagined immigrating to places that were not tried and true colonial sea routes, or that their descendants would be cosmopolitans. Because let me tell you, for those of you, if you've been to Chotila, it's not cosmopolitan at all. It's the equivalent of a road stop, with gas stations and a place to stay, and it's a village if you're being generous about how you define villages. So as I took that journey to Kyiv on Monday morning, I was wondering about the journey that our ancestors took from the port of Mumbai, where Laurie and I also visited, and that was a bit of an undertaking because it's run by the Navy now, and the Navy doesn't really want people coming in there, particularly journalists. But there's funny enough, a cruise line that operates out of the port of Mumbai. They have one ship. It's an old Royal Caribbean ship from about 30 years ago. And their CEO is an old Royal Caribbean executive. And there's one cruise ship in India. And people board the ship and they go for 4 or 5 day cruises within India. That's the very same exact port that our ancestors left from. And they didn't go on a cruise ship. They went on cargo ships if they could get them. And they looked out. So I stood there looking out at this dock and looking, the cruise people found a way to get me in there so that I could see it. And I'm looking out at this ocean, and I'm wondering what our ancestors thought when they were on that dock, what their life was going to be, the uncertainty of that life. And I'm also watching people boarding this cruise ship who know exactly what their life is. And the idea that people use that cruise ship now for leisure and for entertainment, our ancestors didn't do that. They didn't know what they were going to. And I considered their later journeys in Africa, within Africa, in many cases, and then to Europe and the New World. And here I am in Ukraine, and I'm seeing the faces of Ukrainians, and I'm seeing in their faces, I think, the same thing that my parents and my grandparents may have hoped for. They were just hoping that they might be able to live freely and to have equal justice in their own country. And I saw that what happens when people resolve themselves to the fact that it won't happen and they have to leave. And we've got that here in Toronto. This afternoon, if it all works out, I'm going to be meeting a family of Ukrainian immigrants, recent arrivals who, my sister, where is she? Ishrat, and many of you, I think, know my best friend, Mike. He's actually been to these reunions before. Mike and Ishrat have been helping this family settle in Toronto, a Ukrainian family. They've been here a few weeks. They've been living in a hotel very near here, but Ishrat helped them find an apartment in East York. They're renting. I brought a couple of spare phones with me to give them. But mostly I want to meet them, because I've been talking about them with Ishrat and Mikey for the last couple of years, but I haven't met them. And I want to look in their eyes the same way that I looked in the eyes of these Ukrainians and connect with them and feel their energy and their resolve as people who have shown up in this country with nothing, and they don't know what the future holds. And they don't know how it's going to unfold. But as Ishrat and Mikey and I have been talking about it over the last few weeks, the three of us have been optimistic about it because of this family's history. Because we know it'll work out for them. We know they need a leg up, they need some help, but they'll be entirely fine. They've come to a country that values them, that sees immigrants as valuable, that understands that they are now going to be part of our extended family. So, you know, my last couple of weeks have been centered around a people who are struggling for democracy, they're struggling for justice, they're struggling for freedom, crossing the ocean to find a new home, into a world that's trying to figure out what it is and what it wants to be. And when you think about these things, and you think about the role that we all play in this, it takes us back to our history. When you think about the small things that our ancestors did, that I don't know whether it felt small or big to them, to pack up a trunk and get on a wagon and make your way to the train station and go to Bombay at the time and go to this dock and get on a lousy cargo ship to go to Africa. And that was the promised land. Getting to Africa, landing in South Africa, where things were about as unequal as they could be in the world, was still better than the drought-ridden land from which they came. In fact, Laurie and I always wonder, what would have happened if somebody didn't make that decision to leave? I don't know, because that little village looks pretty much like that little village probably looked 125 years ago, but for the fact that it has cell phones and satellite, things like that. It's still that. Still a whole lot of people who are merchants selling things to each other. Oh, India is always fascinating about how that happens. But our history is a proud one about ancestors who did these little things. They were what I'm writing about as small acts of courage. They had small acts of courage. They were not big acts of courage. By the way, some of them, and some of our family has undertaken big acts of courage, but most people just do little things. Little things. And this is the fruit of that. What you are looking at, as I meet my younger nephews and nieces, and I see the amazing things they're doing. And by the way, to my cousins, you're all pretty impressive too, but I'm used to you. Those people who came before us, they planted trees under whose shade they would never, ever sit. They planted trees whose fruit there was no chance they would ever eat. And that's what these little acts of courage are. They're doing little things that you absolutely will not see the fruit of. But in a world that needs these things, we're not in the world that they came from. We're not in a world that was wildly unequal or structurally unequal, in which there was not justice and fairness for all. We're in a world that at least attempts to create justice and fairness and legal access for all. But it's not perfect. It's far from it. There's much we have to do. This smoke in the air outside and the climate situation that we've got in the southwestern United States right now, where people are literally dying of heat. There's much to be done in this world. There's a climate that needs to be fixed. There are wars around the world. There are autocrats who are taking hold. You look at that fight in Ukraine, and these brave people, they don't want anything. They don't want this war. They just want their country. They just want people to stop bugging them. There's even in our own countries things to do. And it is a reminder that we come from a people who undertook the little things to just keep us on the right track, to keep going, to do the right thing for your family. And it is my belief that it's the little things that are going to get us through this. If everybody just does the thing that they can do to make the world a little bit better, to make things a little bit better for your family and your friends and those around you, that's a legacy. And what we're thinking about now when we look back at 125 years of change in this family is a legacy. It is, and I'm not sure that everybody involved in it at the time knew that it was a legacy. Some did. Uncle Remtala was one of those people who knew at the time that he was doing things that was about a legacy. He was actually, it was obvious that he was fighting injustice in a very obvious way. And there are other members of the family who have done that. But that's not what everybody has to do. Everybody just has to do a little bit to leave this place a little better than where we found it. And certainly in this new and younger generation, you're much more conscious of those things than we are. And so that, to me, this is less a reunion now than it is a real celebration of this achievement. If our grandparents and great-grandparents, those who are not with us, could see this, can you imagine what they'd think when they'd go around to each table and put their QR codes, if they could figure out what a QR code was, and figure out who these people are and what they do? In their wildest dreams, could they have imagined that this room would be filled with the people that it's filled with? Remarkable entrepreneurs, hard workers, people who have achieved the highest levels of education, people who have decided to find new and innovative ways to attack the issues of the world. We have people in the arts, which is a luxury that was not afforded to us in the past because you had to do other things. And education was not a luxury that was afforded to us in the past. And yet now that it is available to us, everybody in this room has done something to say we live in this great free world. Don't stop making it better. And it's this realization that we're part of this legacy. This is the moment at which you reach back and you thank those people who came before you, and you say, what can I do so that when they're having this thing, like I said, my dad says he's not organizing anymore, but I suspect somebody else will, and I'll offer him up as a consultant. I'm grateful to Nabila and Mo and my dad for doing that, for reminding us that we're part of something bigger and something more important, because we all have very, very busy lives and forget to keep in touch with each other as much as we should. So Mo, I have to thank you in particular for adding the QR code, because now nobody's got an excuse not to sort of scan it and just email someone and say, hey, it was great to reconnect with you. Or frankly, it's okay, it was great to meet you for the first time. Or the last time I met you, you were 2 and we weren't having much of a conversation. To maintain that and to take this forward, I think is going to be the real takeaway from this. So I was looking forward to it. I'm really happy that I was able to make it and see you all. But now that I'm here, I'm sort of overcome with a different sense, and that is deep, deep gratitude for those who came before us, for those who are no longer with us, and for those who actually are in this room, for those of you who thought this was important to come and see each other and get the energy from each other. So thank you for that. And we'll continue these conversations one-on-one. I appreciate it.
One more round of applause. That was amazing. Thank you so much, Ali, for that empowering message. I think you really encompass the true essence of why we're here and why our ancestors came here and why it's so important that we're all here together. As someone who's grown up my whole life in Canada, I think one of the strongest sentiments that I can take from family is that there's so much value in storytelling. And storytelling has always sort of been what I've strived to do through my work. And I think that as South Africans, one of the greatest canvases that we can have for our stories and our futures is being with each other and talking to each other and making the connections that we're doing so today. And as some of you may know, in 2015, I actually adapted Uncle Muhammad's book, Into That Heaven of Freedom, into a play that I put on in middle school. And so I'm sure some of you may have even been there to come watch the play. But since that day, I knew that this was something that was very important to me, and this is something that I've been waiting for, is a reunion of this kind, to meet people that I met that day in 2015. And as every day goes by, it's equally as important to acknowledge those who are no longer with us and those who are with us today. So thank you for doing that, Ali. One more. But before I let you return to your conversations, I just want to make a few more announcements. One, dessert is now open. I know that's our family's favorite thing about every event. So we have some wonderful dessert. If you haven't had so, please do so as well. The other thing is, in about roughly 45 minutes, we are going to be gathering for our group picture, which we'll walk you through. But please, if you haven't had a chance to do so, sign the mural. It's actually been moved to the back corner over there. So please get a chance to sign it so it can be full of colors for our picture. That'll be amazing. And if there's nothing else from Mo, Nabila, no? Not yet. Not yet, I will be told. Yes? Awesome. Keep enjoying, keep eating, and keep talking. We'll be back. Yes. So we're gonna do the group for small token for everyone. So where's Zahir Topan? Somewhere around. Yes. So just at the back, he's prepared copies of our last reunion that you can collect from him. So you have a few USBs and a few DVDs. So if you do want a copy of that, you can go find him at the back. Yes? You want to say?
Of the video, and so I can't obviously give everyone a copy. So when you go seated at your table, I'll visit each table and drop off a USB there. And with the making connections theme of the event, you can hopefully just share the video, right? So appreciate that. Thank you.
Before we get to the group photo, yes, I know we're excited to take the photos. Okay. Everyone, can I have your attention? I'm just gonna pass it over to the organizers of today's reunion, Mo and Nabila, to say a few words, all right? Uncle Mo, I don't know.
All right. Sorry, we're wrapping up in just a few moments. We need to leave the hall by 3, so we will do the group photo in 2 minutes. But if I could just get everyone's attention, please. All right. Sorry, I know there's very engaging discussions happening, and I feel very bad to cut it off, but I think it's very important for us to give a few thanks and acknowledgements before we end the afternoon. I just wanted to say we're very thankful. We cannot express how grateful we are to have all of you here together today. As we all know, we've had to reschedule this a few times, and we're really glad that we were able to come together. So I just wanted to say a special thanks, first of all, to our MC, Aryan Kanji. Thank you for keeping us on track and keeping us entertained throughout the afternoon. Thank you to Ali Velshi for that touching and riveting keynote speech on family and the importance. Manpreet from Bombay Palace for the wonderful arrangements for this afternoon, the great food, his staff, all the support that they've given us to help us put together this wonderful afternoon. All the people who traveled from all across Canada, we've had people come from literally end to end of the entire country, all over the US, the UK. We really appreciate you taking the time and the effort and the cost of coming down to celebrate with us. To Moyes and Nimira for their offer to photograph today's event in memory of her parents. We really appreciate. Without the photography, we cannot capture the wonderful interactions that we're all making today. I want to thank Subhash and his team for the videography. They've been doing a fantastic job trying to capture everything, and we'll be sharing a link in the coming days with all the photos and videos from today's event. And if you're not already following the Facebook page, we will send an email out with the link to the photos, as well as the link to the Facebook page to keep in touch and to keep seeing the updates that we're going to share in the coming weeks. Last but not least, definitely not least, we'd like to thank Uncle Murad and Auntie Mila for and I really want to give importance to this because they've hosted 6 reunions over the last 40 years, as you've heard probably a few times tonight, but their dedication to bring the family together and keep us connected has been truly an accomplishment, and we are extremely, extremely thankful for that service that you've done for us over the last 40 years. So thank you so much. Another round of applause for them. I know he doesn't want to say anything, so I'm not going to put him on the spot, but just standing up here and giving us the support to continue doing this in the years to come. As Ali said, we'll be consulting your services as we put together the next reunion, and we will be getting feedback from all of you in terms of what you want to do next. We can do it in another city, we can do it on a boat, there's lots of options, so we'll be reaching out for information. South Africa, okay, yeah. So we look forward to that, and now I'll hand it over to Aryan to coordinate the group photo. So Thank you, everyone, for coming out, and we look forward to staying connected throughout the rest of the weekend. Pictures happening in the next few minutes.
So yeah, can we just have everyone come to the dance floor?